on in. Hello, everyone. We're so excited for everyone to be here. See everyone coming in. This is so exciting. We have so many people here tonight, and thank you everybody for coming. We at Foster's really appreciate it, and we're so happy to be here with all of you. Hello. I'm Jason A. Sparks. I'm the president and executive director of Foster's Theatrical Artist Residency. We're thrilled that you're all with us for our very first Foster's Forums. And before I turn it over to Rachel Chavkin and Ahmad Simmons, just wanted to give you all a really quick history of Foster's in case you're new to Foster's. But before that, some ground rules. If you're new to webinars, I know some of you probably trying to like frantically turn off your video or your sound. Don't need to worry about that. In webinars, you're cool. Don't worry about the video or sound. You're just kind of attending tonight. I will be keeping an eye on the Q&A down below, as you see. So if you have any questions for Rachel and Ahmad for the night, put it in the Q&A. I'll be in there and kind of scrolling through all of those and keeping tab of all of those questions. Don't put the questions in the chat, but please do use the chat if you feel like you want to underscore what somebody says, or if you want to chat with each other. That chat is there for you. So questions in the Q&A, chat in the chat. And last kind of rule, this should feel relaxed. If you want to pour yourself a glass of wine, if you want to make yourself a cup of tea tonight, I have both. So however you want, this should feel just like a relaxed conversation kind of night. Little quick bit on Foster's. Foster's is a new nonprofit that we founded this summer. And our main mission is to change how we make theater. We strive to give storytellers, playwrights, actors, more time in process without the need for product. One of the main ways that we do this is through our residencies. And if all goes well, we'll see in the spring with COVID and whatnot, we'll be having our very first in-person residency. We'll be taking a playwright whose work is ready to kind of be heard and needs that kind of process, and providing the playwright with actors and dramaturg / kind of creative doula to help out with those things and give them time, space, and resources to figure that out, as well as supplying them with daily yoga, 3 healthy meals a day, lodging, and transportation to a place that is just outside of the city, so that they feel away from the city. And all of this is at no cost to the artists. We really feel that when you take care of the human, you take care of the artist, and therefore take care of their art. That's what we believe here at Foster's. 2 quick initiatives that we're doing before those residencies. We just closed our applications for Cultivating Curiosity Through COVID, which is a week-long retreat happening January 3rd through the 9th, where we'll be hosting 8 actors and 2 playwrights as we create a short virtual play. And we'll be sending them a box of curiosities filled with kind of surprises of ways that we will explore how to be creatively curious at home without that sense of community that we're used to, as well as our very first Foster's Forums, which we have today, which we're so excited and so grateful that Rachel is our first guest. So I'm going to be turning this over to my dear friend and Foster's vice chair of the board, Ahmad Simmons. You may have caught Ahmad Simmons on as Ben Vereen on the Emmy-nominated Fosse Verdon, or maybe you've seen him in the revival casts of Cats, Carousel, or most recently, The West Side Story. And of course, he was original Broadway cast member of Hadestown. So I will invite Ahmad into the room. Hi, Ahmad.
Hey. Hi everyone.
Thanks for being here with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
It's the kickoff.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy we're doing this. This makes me so happy to be a part of Foster's and use the platform in this way. So yes,
Ahmad was a huge impetus for why this all happened, and he's a huge impetus about connecting with all of you guys. So as Rachel and Ahmad start talking tonight, please go in that Q&A. Like I said, I'll be kind of making sure then I'll be popping back in with questions that you may have, and type them in there. So have fun, Ahmad, and I'm going to go away, but I'll be back in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, hi everyone. I'm so pumped to kick off this conversation series, um, because I feel like this time finds me in a place where, well, a lot of us in a place where we are um, ready to pursue our way of getting back. Like what a lot of the conversations like what how are we going to get back? How do we get back ethically? Like what is it going to look like when we come back? And where, what are you doing now? And um I I feel like the best thing that's happening right now are these sort of conversations where we're really just ingesting a lot of information and listening a lot and connecting with people that we may not have been able to connect with as we were living that day to day, no time for anything life. So, all that to say, I'm really excited and I'm really, really, really overjoyed to have the first guest be someone who I love so much and who created one of the safest, most beautiful, joyous spaces I've ever been in a process. And we'll be talking about that process and how it relates to power structures. Um, Rachel Chavkin, if you don't know, is an incredible writer, director, dramaturg, visionary. I call her a fall catcher, fall encourager, um, safe space maker, of course, driving force, I would say, genius, friend. Her work has been celebrated with Obies and Lortel recognition, Tony Awards. Her work here in Broadway, off Broadway, overseas. She's just a brilliant, brilliant person to collaborate with and to make theater with. And yeah, I mean, I'm just so happy. Come in, Rachel. This is Rachel Chapkin, our first guest. I just like want to talk. Let's go.
Hi. That
Hey,
was so nice.
hi. How are you?
I'm so happy to be in space with you
Yeah, me too.
and
Me too.
otherwise fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It's like I said, a lot of people have been asking, well, where does this time find you?
Mm.
Um, and it's such a an interesting question, but also so jam packed with things. So I wonder, like, what if that was our first thing? Like, where does this time find you?
I mean, right now I wonder if it'll like how much it will make an entrance in a thunderstorm is happening outside,
Oh,
which is
really?
very beautiful. I'm up in
Yeah.
Newburgh, New York.
Yeah.
Just geographically, on the ancestral lands of the Lenape and
Mhm.
Mohican, and um, am I don't know, where does this time find me? I think it finds me like reading more than I have in years. It finds me working endlessly on these decks for film and television ideas that I've been thinking about forever, but haven't
Yeah.
had the space to work on. And so I've been giving shape to a lot of those over the past few months, and then having more family time than I've gotten really to
Yeah.
ever have in my adult life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think about, so like Jason said, we for everybody, we met, our paths crossed and our lives came together with Hadestown, um, which actually sparked my idea for why I wanted to talk to you specifically, because Hadestown, although I joined right pretty much at the tail end of it, had been in process for many years. And also, a lot of work that Rachel does is with her own company called The Team that she is the artistic director of. And they do a ton of devising and long range process work. And yeah, so I, I guess we can go into that because you're talking about just reading and pursuing things that you actually you didn't have time for. I'm wondering about like what now that you have this time, like what
Mhm.
would you say is your ideal process? Like, what do you,
Oh,
I mean, what would you consider like vital in a process? Like when you're doing these decks, when you're in a
right.
room, like,
That's such a wonderful question. I don't know if I have. I mean, definitely time. Like one of the things we talk a lot about with the team and that I think very personally about in like how I build relationships, maybe with newer collaborators um and then just build a room is Adrienne Marie Brown, activist and scholar and thinker. And in her book Emergent Strategy, she talks about moving at the speed of trust.
mm,
And so I think like that is a real principle of process that I have um, yeah, just spent a lot of time sitting with is you can't, as much as I can like tell you I want to listen to you and hope that you believe that I'm a good collaborator, really at the end of the day, it is only through a prolonged working process that we will get there. And I think about that with Hadestown, like Aeneas and I spent the better part of a year basically trying to date each other and get to know
yeah,
each other and figure out if we were going to work together. And then finally I was just like, well, can I just tell you what I would do if I was directing this? And she was like, oh my God, please, and finally like broke through to the genuine work. And that's, for better or for worse, sort of where we have to stand. But beyond that, I don't know if there's any. I just think each project, like the thing that turns me on most in my professional life is eclecticism, like is working on these different projects that don't necessarily feel like each other or even like anything else I've quite seen before. And part of the directorial job is to like architect what the process is for that particular piece. And I think if each piece is different, then that answer is going to be different.
yeah. I mean, when I think about it, I think in terms of guiding sort of a series of changes, really,
Mm,
like a process, really, because yeah, it's like it takes time. It takes first that time to build the trust, and the trust comes from everybody getting to their base level of uniqueness in a way. And you can't really set a speed to that, can you? I mean, is that, that must be something that is difficult when you have 4 weeks to set a piece of work, or this needs to be done here, deadlines. How do you navigate getting people in a room to their full uniqueness and also pushing deadlines, like, because you said trust takes time, it takes time.
yeah. Oh, I want to go back to what you said about changes.
Mm,
But I'll say first, like in terms of time, I guess it's why I think most really excellent projects will go through multiple incarnations. I mean, there's a reason that Hadestown came to Broadway after I think 3 or 4 labs and 4 productions, and you were a part of that lab process. You joined that family before, long before the Broadway production. I think
yeah,
you before the Broadway.
before London,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that
And
lab,
we didn't even know exactly, like, we knew choreography. We knew that there was this incredible workers ensemble to do things with, but we sort of didn't know who they were or what they were.
yeah,
And we knew that choreography needed to carry much more weight of the storytelling because the music was expanding and Aeneas was excited about these dance breaks and Todd and
yeah,
Michael, the orchestrators, but what was to be happening within those was really quite open. Um, so so I think time is and what you're talking about in terms of markers is like, well, if you keep doing it, you get to know what is achievable in a 4-week period, right? Like what can be
hmm,
gotten done. But I think also, I guess this was going to be one of the questions I asked you in response to what you said about change and like guiding the process of change.
yeah,
what is like a moment that you can remember developing something where you were like, oh, that was the change that we've been seeking?
Hmm.
Like where someone dropped in or you dropped in. Yeah, you go.
Well, it immediately just takes me to Hadestown, the the second act. I remember working on Epic 3 quite a bunch.
Yeah, sure.
And because like you're saying, we wanted to know, we needed to know what our function was there. We knew that something had to break,
Yeah.
something literally had to break open. And um, but I don't think we could quite track it yet individually, because so much of that process was really you encouraging that
Mm,
very individual storyline from top to bottom.
mm,
And I remember that being a point where we were all like, wow, okay, well, how do we all get to that place? That's an image I have in my head of being in that sort of deciding, like, sort of breakthrough moment, um very clearly.
yeah. Like I'm
Yeah, yeah,
observing like that was both, right? Like that was that day. I remember, and it came because you were like, I can't remember exactly the words you used, but you were basically like, I don't feel different. Like this is the pivotal moment, but it doesn't feel like we're really different at the end of it, even though we've had this
yeah,
song. And that's what led to the idea of the removal
yeah.
of caps and the individuation, the restoring of the individual
Hmm.
body, including the face and head, to what had been these automated workers
Yeah,
in Hadestown. And so it was like weeks and weeks of building, which ran on a year plus of us knowing each other and like starting to build that relationship. But it also was like a single 5-minute sidebar where you were like,
yeah,
what's happening?
yeah,
And then it was like, okay, well, let's work on that. And then by the end of the day, we had begun crafting what ended up being the entire turning point of the show.
yeah.
Um,
Well, but that space I actually want to latch onto, though. Even in that 5-minute sidebar, as a part of this process,
mm,
is a lot of what, I think we want to happen totally when we come back, right? So I want to go to that little 5 minutes and what brings us to that in a
mm,
process. Um, I do find, well, you're talking about trust, but building on that trust, there is also a level of knowing each other that has to happen as a part of a process. I mean, would you agree, like, that we first have to really know, you know, much about each other, um, past the talent or the what would you call it, the title, for lack of a better word,
do you
you
think that's
know?
true? How much did you know about me personally? And how much did
Well,
I know about you?
I mean, like, I felt like I had to build past just like what we've done.
Yeah.
I remember there was one of my final callbacks. I was singing some of the Hades stuff.
Yeah. We made you sang I mean, you like killed every single
You,
role in that
yeah,
show.
you made me sing everything. It was fun,
We
and I
joked
feel
about
like
it
Liam got
being,
such a kick out of it.
we were like, you're gonna be the one man Hades guy. We could have made you singing Eurydice.
It was actually so fun though. And what I saw in the moment in that callback, I remember seeing your smile
Hmm.
and a tilt of your head that was like, when you look at someone and you're like, I want to know more. I don't know. I'm saying this is what I saw.
Yeah, yeah,
Doesn't
yeah,
mean it
yeah.
actually happened.
Yeah.
And honestly, immediately I was like, oh, there's like curiosity past the thing.
Hmm.
So while I didn't have a relationship with you before the process, there was something right there
Yeah,
that
yeah.
made me that like immediately let something relax in me, so that day one there was already a level of like of trust, like base trust there from the audition process. So I mean, I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to fully know someone, but I think you do need to understand, or quickly get to understand, where they come from. I mean, would you?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. I've never thought about this before. I feel like I'm glad that I smiled, because I think often, like, sometimes I can, like, Amber will joke about me, like, kind of getting a dead look in my eye sometimes as I'm like doing the math. Because often when I'm watching an actor, I'm like watching that actor work, but I'm also like thinking about the light cue that might be going at that, like I'm
Right.
like kind
Yeah.
of in a bunch of different
Yeah.
places. But I feel like that head tilt and maybe the thing that you're talking about, and you're as much an authority on this as me, because I think only you know what, because you were the one who like actually moved us forward in the moment of change that you're describing by raising your hand and saying something is not congealing, right? And so what I know is like, I love getting to know the actors and the artists I work with like desperately, and I will happily get to know them slowly over years. And also, I really like what I trust and certainly think about in an audition process is like, I'm hiring, if it's an actor, and hiring, I'm technically not the producer, but like I'm a part of casting someone who is going to problem solve with every interior and exterior fiber of their being. And your expertise, both broadly but also like you, Ahmad Simmons, your area of expertise is so deep and it's so fucking different than mine. Like you care about such different things than I do, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that is your job as well, in Hadestown's case as an actor, though also you're a composer and you're a choreographer, like you are many, many things. But in that moment, right, your job was to be defending and thinking about your arc as fully as possible. And if I'm looking at the light cue, then I might miss a pivotal moment that is also my job, but it's not where I had my eye at that time. So
Yeah.
I guess this goes back to that root question that we're thinking about it, which is collaboration. And to me, as a director, like I need everyone at the top of their fucking game, because particularly directing a big musical, there's too much to think, there's just too much for any one person to think about. And so everyone kind of has to be their own lieutenant in charge of their part
their
of
own sort of character or space, while you have the grand vision. Well, in terms of the collaboration though, in the room, I found that there's this sort of collective, like a collective governance in a way, that does give right or authority or power, which to me power is right, to be at the top of your game and all push forward on your prongs. So but it's that collective that I think was so special. That collective governance, I would call it, so special in that process. And is that something that you find you always chase? I know with the work you do with the team, there's a sort of democratic, consensual leadership, way of working.
The team strives to be as non-hierarchical as possible. I mean, the team is sort of in a wonderful and insane way, a very mad experiment in basically consensus-driven art making, which has its upsides and its downsides. Like Hadestown would never come out of the team. It's too pure in a beautiful sense. It's too pure in its authorship, and singular
Mm.
in its vision, even though it's the collective total of 100 plus people's visions, right? But like the nugget of it is Aeneas. And yet the team is, well, for Reconstruction, we now have over 25 writer makers in the room who are sometimes writer performers, who are writer designers, who are, I'm co-directing Reconstruction with Jalen Livingston.
Jalen, yeah.
Yeah, and Danae Benton was like describing the process this summer at the Broadway Advocacy Coalition on a panel, and she was like, I often don't know who is leading the room. I know who's facilitating. And I loved her distinction of that, because I think for the team that feels really accurate, that Jalen and I are kind of helping to guide like what we might be doing for the next hour. But sometimes that begins by asking the company, so we could do this, or we could do this, or I was thinking about this. Where company do you want to go? So it's like very inefficient.
Yeah.
For better and for worse.
But why, but I do wonder, you know, we're talking about that unilateral, like, is there a way, because a lot of us now are wanting more of what the team does to, we feel that you can still create in that very, you know, consensus based, like lead more, I would call it more horizontal way of creating for a main stage. I mean, we're trying to fill that gap there, or bridge that gap there. So it's interesting that you say it's inefficient, because is it because it takes too much time, do you think? Like, I do wonder why Broadway, as we know it, because that's what I've been doing, doesn't take more time, you know? Is there,
Because time is money. I mean, there's no question about that. To my mind, there's no like mystery about it.
Yeah.
Because time is money, and the team pays a living wage, but our wages still don't, and we pay more than I think almost any off-Broadway contract, but we don't pay what a Broadway contract does. But it doesn't mean that you can't strive for that horizontality, certainly even within a Broadway framework, I think.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it takes more investing in an artist than investing in the show itself. You know, like if there's a different way of approaching it from the money aspect that allows the show to take whatever time it needs. I mean, you would need an endless amount of money probably, but there's ways to do it. I just wondered if that's something you think about.
Well, and you're not necessarily talking, or are you, about collaboratively written work?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
No, just like,
that's what makes the team so inefficient, is actually at the end of the day, the team is a theater company, but really we're a collaborative playwriting company.
Yeah. Which you're looking for at the end, no seams.
That's the idea.
Right. Like, you don't want to know whose work starts where.
Yeah, although Reconstruction probably will take the form, maybe we've been talking about the work in terms of as these constellations. So like we have, or like little short stories or something that will interweave. So there might be seams, because each of those have like a few different writers who are part of it, because with 25 writers, it was like kind of too much to try to have everyone. And people quite naturally began making characters that had to do with certain other characters. Then you'd have these other characters over here. So so it was a way of bringing focus. But I think you could totally, I love this idea that you're talking about of like investing in the artist.
Like as I think like an impresario would do back, you know, like you champion the work of that artist over a certain amount of time.
Yes.
and really just you're sponsoring their process, you know, trusting that something wonderful will come out of it.
Yeah.
And it, you know, yeah,
well, and I think we see, I do think we see that. Like, I think, well, I'm thinking about Marianne Elliott in London, and like Nick Heitner did this. There's a lot of British artists who now have sort of spun into having basically their own production companies to just make possible whatever work they're imagining, and it will be that artist working typically in partnership with a producer. But I also think institutions do it. Like, I think the public does it with artists they love. I think MCC, I mean, I think every New York Theater Workshop certainly, and I have that relationship. So I think what is underdone is the idea of actors as an entry point, or a dancer as an entry point, and accessing them as generative beings. And I think that is one of the great underutilized resources, probably, of most corners of our industry, at least on the Broadway level, is looking to those artists as generators, as well as like stand on 5 and turn however many times.
Yeah, I do find that there's a lack of, before this time, a real lack of upward mobility. Like you like only seeing a stage manager as a stage manager is a very dangerous thing, or only seeing like there's, and I say a lot that it's about giving me access to all parts of the process, and it has to start from the beginning. There seems to be, with power, if I think of power the way I like to, which is a right, or if you think of electricity, like to give energy to, you know, to power something, like I think it allows that person, that producer, those producers to sort of open up their book or their door more, rather than thinking of it as something that can be taken away or that needs its own autonomy. Like that doesn't allow for any kind of upward mobility or seeing me past being on 5. You know? So like I do wonder if it's just a matter of changing the idea of what a producer does, like, you know, and from the beginning of it though.
Yeah.
You know? Like baking it into the principles day to day. You know?
Yeah, I'm thinking of everyone as a full artist also. And I think it goes to, I mean, a full artist, and also like a full owner of their labor. I mean, I think it goes into pay structures. It goes into, and it goes into those strangeness of how differently like creatives are paid from talent. Like I can remember when I first got an agent and they were like, oh, you're on the creative side and then there's the talent side. I was like, what am I, not the talent? And it was like, what is this? And it's a very strange thing in our industry. But I think it is, I think it certainly begins as a paradigm shift to assume. I'm thinking about the stage manager example that you gave, and my dear friend and often collaborator, Janae Bonnick, who, you know, Janae, and she's one of the most extraordinary, like, artistic thinkers and humans I have ever worked with. And she now really considers, at least sometimes when it's called up from her, stage being like a technical artist as a stage manager. And I think Janae does happen to have ambitions that go beyond stage management. And also I think there's a wonderful thing to be a stage manager all your life and to just approach it in this much more holistic way.
Yeah.
Or an actor or dancer, etc.
I hope with our questions we can get more into the nitty gritty of that. I just saw Jason pop in. Do we I don't want to take all
We
of
have
y'all's time.
so many great questions. It's
Okay.
so cool. It's like everyone's super engaged.
Oh, great. Good.
And actually, I mean, off of so many tidbits that you both have been saying, but one from Jackie Carnahan, she says, what advice would you give an actress who wants to produce and perform in a project, whether it's something she has written herself or not? We see performers listed as producers, writers, actors on the same project all the time in TV and film. That crossover is much more rare in theater. Why do you think that is? And what would you say to theater actors who want to go in this direction?
Ahmad, I feel like you have thought more about this question than me. So I feel like you should start.
I mean, I'm newly thinking about it, like within the past 3 months.
No, you talked to me about this at least 6 months ago.
I know. Well, I do believe that there should be no pigeonholing. I mean, I think if you have the vision, whatever entry in or way of pursuing that vision you want should just happen. I mean, like I don't think there's. I do find the difference between theater and like TV. There's an autonomy thing that I think theater struggles with. Like it wants to have a face or a name on this, where I don't know. I'm thinking of like the work that Kerry Washington's doing, or the work that's even Reese Witherspoon is doing. You know, these women who are just making what they want to make.
Yes.
You know.
Totally. I mean, I think that like, right, my experience is fundamentally that there's two types of producers. There's the producers who are contributing or managing the money. And there's producers who are really good at getting shit done, including harnessing and finding the money. And you can have the same in both. I mean, I think we can both probably think of many people off the top of our heads who sit at that nexus. But I think in my experience, and it's very small amount of experience, but in film and TV, is that really you find actually the vast majority of producers who I meet are creative entities who are like, I want to see this happen. And then they're beginning to put together the elements, including the artists, who are going to make that happen. And I think to the question that you were amplifying, Jason, the fundamental like definition of a producer is someone who makes shit happen, who produces result. And so I think I tend to think about, okay, what is the next immediate series of steps? And if you are engaged in that, even if one of those steps that you're taking for granted is, and I'm going to be playing that role, those two things can absolutely simultaneously exist, and that is the actor producer.
Another question coming from Angela Joy that kind of goes into that. I'm very curious for each of you. How do you individually begin your own creative processes?
Rachel,
you want me to start?
Yeah.
Golly, it's different for every. It's different for every process. So I'm thinking about. Well, I guess I'll use Hadestown since it's like probably a very visible example. In that case, I started obviously getting to know Aeneas, and then just listening to that. When I first met Aeneas, there were two things. There was a libretto, which I read and pretty quickly it was like, let's put that aside. And then there was the studio album from 2010.
Yeah.
And so I just listened to that nonstop and began recording in my brain a whole bunch of different images and putting together like I did a little bit of image research, but mostly the start of that show was me feeding back to Aeneas everything I pictured, including every character I began to picture from what I heard. And then we talked about where the gaps were in the stories. And at that time, from the 2010 album, there were a lot of gaps. There were more, in fact. There were like little islands peeking out above the water line, but mostly it was underneath the water line at that point. And so we talked about things that way. If I am writing myself, very often I like to start from a much more illogical place, like putting on some music in headphones that I sort of immediately can tune out. And then I described it as like rolling my eyes back in my head and just sort of seeing what comes. And then I have to do a massive retrofitting of like, okay, outline this now. How are these characters evolving? This feels good. This doesn't work, etc. And I have a harder time with that part. Whereas like Dave Malloy begins with an outline and then he goes crazy from there. So yeah, I don't know if one is better than the other, but those are two different ways of working. How about you, Ahmad?
I mean, for me, since most of the past 5 years has been as a performer, I'll talk mostly about that. For me, I have to put everything past my body. I try and let it move me first as a person that, you know, has trauma, has joy, has hopes, has curiosity. Specifically for dancing, like that's what I have to do first. I have to put it past my body before I enter like what the technique of the thing is or what the direction of the thing is. When I'm making, like, which is what I've been doing for the past like 3 months, is I have to sort of date like I have to date the story. I don't know if that's a weird way of saying it.
I love it.
But yeah, I have to, you know, it's the courtship for a while to make sure that there's something still burning there after a while. The dreams, I want to be able to dream about you. I want to miss you and then come back to the story or the character or the person that I'm wanting to write about. So there's that, and then there's music. Like that was such a huge part of how I came up. So there has to be that mixed with a soundtrack to that courtship. Like immediately, I have to hear the soundtrack of my life with whatever I'm working on before I enter in. That's where I am in this stage of my
loved that
process.
Yeah.
I love you hear you talk about it as a person. That's really cool. Like that analogy, I think is awesome. We're going to go back for we're going to circle back to some things that both of you had said earlier, but this comes from Parker Drown. How do you lead and architect a process while making space for everyone's own voice as an artist to be heard?
Yeah, so when I used to teach directing, I can kind of vividly remember a lot of earlier career artists who would think of collaboration as saying, so what do you think? And to me, that's like the biggest nightmare because it's like, well, I don't know. What do you like? Give me something to react against. So actually for me, Jason, are you frozen? You guys, you can hear me, right? Okay, good.
Yeah, you're good.
Great. So I have found, and again, I'm saying this as like the person, you know, inside the process I'm about to describe. So I have to like trust that Ahmad, you said you liked working together and other people seem to like working together, that this seems to be working. But I tend to approach collaboration, and specifically to the question that was just asked, I think it was Parker, um, in terms of making space for others, that actually the best thing that I can do, at least as the director, in a hierarchical process, again, the team is sort of totally separate, is to have some really strong ideas about world, about character, about vibe, about a moment, and like what is so painful in a moment. And then that is the starting place for then the performers to react against, for the performer to date that character and see where, to use the image that you just used, Ahmad, to see where that character is going to live inside them, what color they are, what texture they are, where they live in their shoulders and hips, etc. And then they're gonna know more about that character than I will. As a director, I'm thinking about sort of the very large picture, though I might obsess on a given moment in a character's journey. But that's very, very different than doing what an actor has to do, which is from top to bottom, live honestly through a given show. So yeah, that's my response to that question, is like, actually, I think you make space for others by having some hopefully good ideas on your own.
Yeah.
And hopefully those inspire others to think about it, and then knowing, and having no shame or humility or humiliation about what you don't know, being like, I don't know what this moment looks like. David, can you figure it out? Or Ahmad, can you figure it out? Or when Ahmad is like, something's missing from this moment, to go, oh my God, you're right. And what if we do this? And then there's more synergy. Yeah. Is there anything you would add to that, Ahmad? Or
No, I mean, for me, it's just I would say coming in, giving everything you know, and hopefully you knowing a lot from the jump, so that there is something to add on to, and asking questions that you don't know the answer to. I think is what I love in a room. It's where I don't feel like you already know what you want me to say, but you genuinely, you want me to help solve this problem.
Mm.
Yeah.
This question just came in. I think it's a really great one for right now. But Carol Lehan said that moving at the speed of trust is a stunner for me. Do you have a top 3 list of ways to nurture trust?
It's all you.
Well, I mean, I guess the joke is Adrienne Marie Brown, who said that. The point is, there's no ways to short circuit it. I fundamentally think that, like, you trust someone who is transparent. I mean, and it's why I am transparent with what I know, transparent with what I don't know. I try to be transparent with what's happening on a producerial front. Like, if an actor asks me, when do you think we're going back, or what's happening with the filming or whatever, I'll say what I know, basically. I will talk about pretty much anything for better and for worse. I think that, yeah, fundamentally openness begets trust, because fundamentally trust is, are you telling me everything, right? So I try never to ask a question that I already know the answer to. I try never to like play that kind of mind game with a performer, while also like leaving space for them to figure shit out, definitely. Because I think like 90% of the rehearsal process is just an actor trying to figure out, when they're going to breathe, or where they're going to put their left foot, or what trigger they're going to, use for a given emotional moment. And that's all private work. Like that, I don't belong there. I hope that's helpful. Those are all things that come to mind in terms of building trust, transparency being the number one.
That's great. I love that. We got a few more in here, about 8 minutes left. Jumping course, and there's been a lot of questions about art and money. So the one that kind of goes in with that too is, do you believe that commercial theater, this is from Jake, by the way, Jake Alexander. Do you believe that commercial theater, i.e. revivals, already established characters in another medium, blockbusters, can have the same sort of open, collaborative, trust-based process, especially when we consider that money must be made for the work to be produced / performed?
I think that like Hadestown is commercial theater, on a technical level. So, but I also to kind of put that quibble aside, I don't think there's anything I'm most excited conceptually when the form and content and spirit of the process go hand in hand. That's certainly the case with the team's work. But I think there is nothing about, I don't know, revival of Music Man that in any way dictates the level of collaboration or openness that can be a part of that process. Ahmad, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think it takes a big level of commitment to that day-to-day space, like going at it. If you're going to go at it as a brand new piece, you have to keep that same commitment. For lack of a better word, it's the day-to-day. I also think we have to sort of stop dictating what the audience is going to be with those big blockbuster revival things. It's like we already have an audience in mind, and most times with those kinds of shows, we want the audience to be the same as it was when it came out, and that I think that's that hurts what the room does when you're trying to create it. It sort of limits you from the start. But I don't know, that's maybe another conversation.
All right, we got to get one more in here. We have about 6 minutes left, but this kind of goes into this, is how can we balance art, and how can Broadway balance art and money? Can we do better?
Who can't do better? I can do better. Ahmad, I bet you can do better.
Always do better,
yeah. So sure, definitely Broadway can do better. There's no state of being. There's just like the work towards. How can we balance art? I don't know. I guess I like Beyonce makes a lot of money, and she's probably one of the greatest artists and conceptual thinkers we know. So I truly don't believe that there's anything antithetical between art and commerce. I think that, Ahmad, what you were saying previously really strikes home for me on this point, which is the assumption of catering to a comfort, like to a type of comfort that is, and that I'm going to say is somewhat antithetical to art, as I like to think about art. And I don't necessarily mean that art has to be unpleasant, but I am interested in great works of art being destabilizing in some way. And so making assumptions about an audience and like which audience you're going to sell to exactly. But I think there's as much wildly successful, completely fucking far out art.
Yeah, I think art can be bold, money can be bold, and when they're both bold together, then you're in our best, state, I think. Yeah.
That was amazing. I can't thank both of you so much for showing up
That's
to
it?
Foster's. I know it's like we've 3 minutes left, and I got to get that money pitch in there as well. You know, got to get that nonprofit money pitch. But Rachel, thank you for coming to Foster's. The work you're already doing out there is what we strive to do. So thank you for being a leading voice within the community already.
Well, thank you for having me, and Ahmad, I will go anywhere you are. So
Thank you.
And thank you for
Super.
everyone that showed up tonight. We had tons of people come, and thank you for being so involved. That's what Foster's Forums is all about. It's to put you in conversation with trailblazers that are making a difference, so that more of us can make a difference. That's kind of what we're all about. Real quick, tomorrow is Giving Tuesday. So there's 2 really easy ways. If you had a good time tonight to give to Foster's, you can go to our website, www.fostersresidency.org, and make a tax-deductible donation. Or if you want to give $2, $3, anything makes a difference, you can Venmo us. We have our own Venmo at Foster's Residency. It's literally at Foster's Residency. It couldn't be any faster. You could do it from your phone like right now. And that's a great way to help these programs keep happening. Speaking of the programs, every Monday for the next 3 weeks. Next week, I'm so excited. We have Justin Peck that's going to come talk to us. Then after that, we have the incredible Robert O'Hara. We haven't announced that yet, who is remarkable. And then rounding out the series, we have the amazing Anna DeVere Smith. So so happy with all of those. You can sign up for all of those on our website right now. They're all live for you to register, just like you did tonight for Rachel and Ahmad. Again, Rachel and Ahmad, thank you. You're both doing the work, and that's so inspiring to see, and the way you live your lives as an artist. So thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. Have a good night.
Bye.